Hey, it's Patrick, and today I'm going to show you how to install a complete S&S carburetor kit on this twin cam dyno. This install is going to be very similar for Sportsters as well. Now, why would you want to put this kit on your bike? Well, if you're starting to add horsepower to your bike via some cams or a big bore, put an exhaust on your bike, this is going to be what you need to kind of get the most out of those upgrades. Not only is it going to give you the extra ability to tune and swap jets and add extra fuel, the S&S E and G kits are going to flow much more air because they're a bigger opening. This CV carburetor here, these are great carburetors, but only has about a 36mm opening. We're going to be putting an E on this, which I believe has a 48mm opening, so a lot more air going into this engine. These kits are complete. The S&S Shorty E and G carbs use a different manifold. This kit comes with the manifold, and it comes with the air cleaner, stem to stern, everything you need. Now, you do not need to have your bike taken as far apart as we do here. We're doing some other upgrades, but you will need to take the tank off probably to get the best access to get in there and get the new carb, or get the old carb off, new carb on. You can do this in your garage with simple hand tools, and we'll go ahead and leave that list of tools we use today down in the description. Well, let's get to work. So we're going to start actually on the left side of this bike, on the opposite side of the carburetor, just because I want to give us some access, because we're going to need to get to the back side of this manifold. Take a 1/2" wrench, we're going to take our horn off, leave it down here. We're going to take our choke cable loose, and then we're going to take our motor mount bracket off with a 9/16. We'll pull that loose, and that'll give us access to the top of this manifold. So while we're over here, we're going to unplug our map sensor, and we're going to eventually need to remove that map sensor from that manifold and put it in our new manifold. For now, we're just going to unplug it. We're going to go to the other side of the bike. We're going to put some slack in our throttle cables so we can take them off our carb and remove our carb from the motorcycle. You need to take the lock nuts, ours are already loose, and loosen them up on your cable. This is a 3/8 wrench if you need it. And then we need to put a bunch of slack in it, meaning we need to roll these all the way down so there's no threads showing on each one. So now we're going to pull our carb off of our manifold. Once we get it pulled off, we can kind of turn it towards us to access our cables. Sometimes it helps to have a little pick. We'll pick those cables off there, and our carb will be completely off. So now we take our manifold off. We're going to use a 1/4" Allen. We're going to pull these two screws in the front. It helps to have a ball Allen. If you're using this side, the short side, to get things loosened up, you may only get short little turns here and there, but once you get going, you can put the ball ends in there, take them out, or you can also get tricky. You can put the ball Allen in there, put a wrench on it, get some leverage on it like that. No matter how you do it, we gotta get these out, and then we'll move around to the other side. So these are gonna be tougher, because you can see the cylinder heads, the way it's cut, it narrows up back here. So it's harder to get an Allen wrench in here. You can get a standard Allen wrench in there. You will be limited sometimes on how much you can move it. So you can get a little fancy. You can cut your Allen wrench off, which does help, or you can use like a rocker box wrench to get in there. But again, you just have to get these loose enough to be able to slide this out of there and slide the new one in. They don't have to come 100% out. So now the manifold is ready to come out. We're gonna push it out to the right side of the bike. You might need to take a little screwdriver and loosen those manifold clamps up a little. When we get it out, we need to save our map sensor to put in our new manifold. That's going to be a T20. Take that screw out, pull that sensor out for the new manifold. So now we're going to put our new manifold on using our old hardware. A couple of things. We need to put our map sensor back in here. We're going to put a little bit of grease on that, put it in there. There is a torque spec on this. It goes in here. It's 15 to 20 inch-pounds. Just snug it up. Just make sure you don't over tighten it. So when you put these flanges on, this little slot goes towards the left side of the bike, or what I would say the rear of the engine. Also, a little tip here. F will be on one, R is on the other one. That stands for front and rear head. So this one with the F is going on the front head, and then we have this little rubber seal, and you can see it has a little bevel to it, a little taper. That goes down in between the manifold and the flange, like that right there. So there's a nice flat surface that gets pressed up against the head. We tighten those down. We want to tighten them down at the same time. You don't want to tighten one down too tight than the other. You want to tighten up together so that seal sits nice and flat up against the cylinder head. Also, when we go ahead and put this in here, it's 15 to 17 foot-pounds on the screws that hold these in there, you're probably not going to be able to get a torque wrench in there. It's actually more important that you tighten them down together, front, rear, and get that to seat down nice and flat, because you definitely do not want an intake leak. So we gotta do a couple more things to finish up our manifold. We have to pull this vacuum line off the back of our old carb, take this plug off the new manifold and plug our vacuum line in, and then we might as well plug in our map sensor now so we don't forget. So we're gonna get our carb set up and ready to install on the bike. Let's talk about jetting. Obviously, I don't know the setup of your bike, so I can't tell you how to jet it exactly, but I can tell you what I would do is start with the jets that are in this carburetor and work off of those, checking your plugs. Now, we do have other videos that breaks down the anatomy of these E and G carbs and what does what as far as jetting, so we'll make sure to put a link there. We're gonna need to get our idle air mixture screw set up, our idle speed screw set, our cable guide on, and our fuel and overflow lines on. So let's get after it. Air mixture screw setting from S&S is what we want to do. It's it's 1.5 turns out. So we're just going to run this down until it bottoms out, and it's important to know when that stops like that, don't twist it real hard. When it stops, it stops. Then we're going to go 1 full turn and 1/2. That's the setting. Now we're going to move on to the actual idle speed down here. On the idle speed, we just want to run this screw down until it makes contact with that wheel. Right when it makes contact, we want to go 1/2 turn, and that's our setting. So now we need to put our cable guide on. It only goes on one way. There's a little flathead screw that comes with it. I recommend putting a dab of blue Loctite on there, and then just snug it up real good. Now we're going to put our fuel line on, slip the hose clamp over the top, slide it on. So now the last thing we need to do is put our overflow tube on, and that just presses right down here on this brass fitting on the bottom of the carb. So now we're going to put the carb on. Make sure you have this little heat shield piece. It's also a good idea to put your throttle cables on now before you put that carb on. It is much, much easier. Pretty simple, just like it came off. Put the puller, i.e. the throttle, on the back one, and you're going to put the idle cable, the little spring on it, on the front part of the wheel. When this bolts to the manifold, there's a little insulator block that goes in here. The smooth side of the insulator block goes up against the O-ring on the carb, and the O-ring on the insulator block goes up against the manifold. And there are 2 big Allen screws that go through from the back, through the insulator block, and thread into the carburetor. You need a 5/16 Allen for these. I would suggest a tiny bit of blue Loctite. S&S does not give a torque spec for these screws. You do not want to strip them out, but I'd say roughly probably around 15 foot-pounds. And you're going to run that fuel line right in between the cylinders. So we need to install our enrichener level on our backing plate before we get over to the bike and the carb. How this is going to work is going to go like this. This little slot is going to slide over the peg on the carb. When you pull this up and down, it pulls it up and down. There's a series of washers that has to go on here with this. There's a little wavy washer. It goes on first. Then there is a steel washer. It goes on second. A plastic washer. Then the lever. This can get a little tricky. Another plastic washer. And then there's this little brass washer that has a little bump out in it right there. That side goes down, the flush side goes up. Little screw, has a little bit of thread locker on it, is gonna hold all of this together. You want this screw to be pretty snug, but not so snug that you can't operate the lever. Tighten it down, you should be able to still snugly operate the lever. You don't want it to fall back down, you want it to stay in place. All right, now we're ready to install our backing plate. We're going to take our gasket, make sure we line it up with the holes on our backing plate, and there are 3 coarse thread Allen screws that we're gonna run through here. These are a 5/32 Allen. What I like to do is run the screws through, then stick my gasket to it so it holds it in place. We're going to put just a touch of blue Loctite on these. We put this backing plate on, make sure this notch in your lever goes right around this little pin right here on your enrichener. We're going to tighten it down anywhere from 60 to 84 inch-pounds. Now I need to put the breather bolts in. And there's some shims that come with these, like these little rubber clad thin washers. You need to check where the backing plate bumps up to the cylinder head. You may have a little gap. We actually don't have a gap, but if you have any gap at all, you take and put one shim in there. And if it's thicker, so on and so forth, you can build them out. You shouldn't need very many. You definitely want to put those in, because if you tighten these breather bolts up, it's going to flex that plate, and that's not a good thing. It'll put stuff in a bind. Also, do not use blue Loctite or any type of Loctite on these breather bolts, according to SNS's instructions. We're gonna put these in, and with our 5/16 Allen, we're gonna torque them to 8 to 12 foot-pounds. So now we're gonna put our air filter and our teardrop cover on, then we're gonna go over and reinstall our motor mount. With the air filter, I just like to take the little seam, this little silver part, and make sure it's facing down. Put some blue Loctite on these tapered Phillips head screws and really snug them up for the teardrop. Now we can go put our motor mount on. We're gonna put our engine mount back on, and we're gonna put a little bit of blue thread locker on these. The two bolts going into the cylinder head are 35 to 40 foot-pounds. This bolt here that goes to the stabilizer link is 18 to 22 foot-pounds. Bam. All right, our carb kit is completely installed. All you need to do is readjust your cables, put your tank on, put some gas in it, and go for a ride. As far as tuning, everybody's bike's gonna be a little bit different, but SNS includes plenty of jets in this kit to get you where you need to go. Overall, I'd say give yourself a couple hours to do this. It is a pretty simple install. Doesn't require a ton of tools, hand tools, you get it done just fine, but there is a lot of steps. If you're looking for more information on this, go ahead and hit that info tab on your desktop or mobile device. That'll take you to the product detail page where you can read other rider reviews and more specs about this kit. If you're still looking for more information, feel free to reach out to our customer service team. They would love to talk to you about what works best for you, your motorcycle, and your budget. I am Patrick. Thank you for watching. Now go work on those motorcycles.